my journey was truly transformational because of all the insult that was heaped my way, and I'm so thankful for that, because that really transformed me into the individual that I am today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Leisurely Baatein. My guest today is a very successful entrepreneur in the healthcare industry, Mr. Gaurav Agarwal. He's the co-founder and managing director of Innovation Imaging Technologies Pvt Ltd. So without further ado, let me welcome Gaurav to Leisurely Baatein. Gaurav, how are you doing?
Very well, Subhadip. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast of yours. I've been following your journey and your episodes, and I love the way you conduct them. And especially given our Manipal connection, I'm just so glad that we are getting to have this chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And let's start by sharing a little bit about your early life, and where does this zeal of entrepreneurship come in from?
So this is a long journey. I'll try to sum it up as quickly as I can and make it interesting. My journey began in various parts of UP. I was fortunate to have a very privileged childhood, honestly. My father was a high-ranking government official in UP, and we always had more helpers than family members, and we used to have houses that were not in square feet but in acres. So I had a very privileged childhood, though in very, very small parts of UP, some very small towns, and being pampered and privileged, being the only male child, and the pickle in the middle. I had an elder sister and a younger sister. Mm-hmm. I was pampered a little more. Growing up years, I think I had a very happy childhood, and that was reflected in my weight. When I joined Manipal, I was 106 kgs. When I got to Manipal, tad too heavy for a place like Manipal. And I was a complete country bumpkin. Couldn't speak a sentence straight in English. Because of my poor academic record, I completed my 11th, 12th in Hindi medium. So Manipal was a bit of a culture shock and a revelation for me, honestly. When I came to Manipal, I got a roommate who was from Mumbai. Mm-hmm. And my values and his values were as culturally apart as they can be. So we were two ends of the spectrum living in the same room. I think that is where Manipal teaches you so many life lessons so succinctly. It's not forced education, but it's real life education. So I got a lot of it along the way. I got bullied. There were nights when I would cry myself to sleep. But that, I think, was a turning point for me, because every time I got challenged in Manipal, it inspired me to at least polish one facet of my personality. So I still remember a very embarrassing incident. If you pick up our first year college book, you would see, mm-hmm. we used to have this competition called Mr. MIT. Mm-hmm. Recollect that?
Yes, I do.
So here I was, a labby lard of flesh, 106 kgs, and you had all these chiseled muscle goers who were all pumped up and extremely good shape. So my seniors thought of a very unique way to rag me. They said, look, you have to be part of this contest. So, this is my very first year in college, and they oiled me all up, and there were these 16 very well built men, seniors, of course. And I was, I was as out of shape. I was at 106 kgs. I was in the middle of that. And there was a picture of that, embarrassingly enough, in our first year college book. And I used to look at that picture, and it used to embarrass me. But after a point, it started to motivate me. And I decided that if I had to live life in Manipal, it had to be on my terms. I lost about 34 kgs while in Manipal. In fourth year, I was 76 kgs. I was taking part in elocution contests. And finally, in fourth year, I did some modeling, of course, college modeling. So my journey was truly transformational because of all the insult that was heaped my way. And I'm so thankful for that, because that really transformed me into the individual that I am today.
Sure. And did that, get you to accept challenges more comfortably?
Absolutely. So today, the biggest motivation for me is when somebody tells me you can't do this. Life became very simple. Somebody challenged me, said you can't do this, and I gave my 100% in accomplishing that. So I'm very thankful for all that was thrown my way. I think those were stepping stones to success.
Very powerful, very powerful. Gaurav, tell us a bit about IITPL and your journey of founding the organization. I mean, you started from you're working in a corporate, and it takes a lot of courage, to leave that that amount of comfort or security, the lack of a better word, to go in and try something which is unknown. I mean, the dream is there, the aspiration is there, but the journey is not smooth most often for most entrepreneurs. So would be very keen, not only for myself but for my viewers, to understand that part of thinking and the journey of the founding from your perspective.
So much as it may sound contradictory to what people usually attribute their success to, I've literally stumbled upon every single success of mine. And I'll tell you my thought process before I started my professional career. I said, I will never get into an arranged marriage. I will never live in Mumbai, and I will never do business. Those were three of my strongest beliefs. I ended up doing an arranged marriage. I ended up living in Mumbai for my most successful role in my career. And I ended up being an entrepreneur. So that should tell you that I have not planned any bit of it. And a lot of times what happened was, whatever I was doing it in a way that nobody could point a finger at my performance. That was the only thing that I could take credit for. And my journey after biomedical engineering began with a campus selection. There were only 2 students. We were a class of 30, and the first guy who got selected was number 2 in the class, and I was right at the bottom of the pile, number 27. So the whole college said if Gaurav has got selected, then the entire batch would have got selected. So life was easy because people had very low expectations of me. And but after the first job, I never looked back, and I had great opportunities come my way. I'm very, very thankful to my family for the strong support and belief that they had in me. And I've been blessed, Subhadip, to have some really, really powerful leaders in my journey. Every single manager or leader that I've reported to has shaped me into the professional that I am today. So I've been very fortunate to have some of those leaders in my first company, which was a company called Dornier, based out of Hyderabad. Then an interesting thing happened. There was a senior of mine, actually my boss. We were traveling to Delhi, and he said, look, we have a Sunday. We arrived on a Sunday from Hyderabad. He said, I'm going for this interview for a company called 3M. Would you want to come along? And, the incentive for me to come along was I had never seen the inside of a 5-star hotel. The meeting was, this was 1997. The meeting was in Lee Meridian, Delhi. And he said, I'll treat you to a good coffee. He just wanted me to tag along. I'm enjoying my coffee, and I'm absolutely bedazzled by the 5-star hotel I've seen for the first time. My manager goes for an interview, comes down, and the manager who was interviewing him from 3M was from Manipal. So he said, who's this guy? So my manager said, he's Gaurav Agarwal from Manipal. He said, Gaurav, you from Manipal? I said, yeah, I am. He said, I am your senior, 6 years your senior. He said, why don't you come up to my room? I'd like to offer you a cup of coffee and sandwich. We got talking. My manager lost the job. I got it.
Oh God.
So the next job.
So what would you rate it to? The power of Manipal or serendipity?
Absolute serendipity, I think. There was generous dollops of luck. This was not something I had planned for. This was not something I wanted. And 3M was a really beautiful company. It was a great company to work for. Very innovative, very employee-centric. So a lot of the core values of running a good organization, solid organization, were instilled in me during my time at 3M.
Sure.
I worked there for 2 years. Then I moved on to a company called Boston Scientific.
Mm-hmm.
That was another brilliant experience and another brilliant story. I joined Boston Scientific because that was the only company that was giving car to its reps. So 25, 26-year-old back then, Maruti 800 used to be a dream.
Right.
So there was again a senior of mine who was going for this interview. I didn't know about this company. He said, "Would you like to tag along?" I said, "Okay." Same story. He got the job, but I also got the job, and I went there because so I hadn't made a CV. I have not ever made a CV. I have not floated my CV ever. It's just these accidents that have actually propelled me to where I am today. So been very, very thankful.
Happy accidents.
Very
happy
happy.
accident.
Very happy. So to talk about my entrepreneurial journey, Subhadip, the big change in my life happened when I joined a company called Guidant in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
This was my third company, and Guidant was an American company, $3 billion company. Their claim to fame was that every second stent, so stent is used in angioplasties, every second stent used in the world is a Guidant stent. Very powerful statement. I mean, 50% of all stents used globally were by this one company, Guidant. It was undisputed leader in the segment. So I continued to grow along the ranks, became part of the leadership team. The company got acquired by Abbott, and then Abbott Vascular became the number one selling stent company in the world, much larger company. And in my last role with them, I was marketing manager Asia Pacific. So I continued to be part of the heart care industry or cardiovascular industry for 10 years. And then I got offered the role of CEO in an Indian multinational company.
Mm-hmm.
So I came from an environment which was very, very sane, very hygienic, very sanitized, so to say, artificially so.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given a challenge to lead an Indian multinational called Merrill Life Sciences.
Right.
And for that, I moved to Mumbai. And that is when I realized that, the world is very different from the horse-jacketed view that I had in a multinational company.
Mm-hmm.
We're used to luxuries. We're used to looking at world in a certain way. And that sort of groomed me. Those 11 months groomed me for starting something on my own.
Mm-hmm.
We took that company from 8 crores to 30 crores. I took a bunch of people from Abbott Vascular along with me, about 14 of them. And we made that company extremely successful, 8 crores to 30 plus crores in 11 months.
Wow.
And then the team said that, look, if we can do it for them, why can't we do it for ourselves? And that is how my entrepreneurial journey began.
Wonderful.
And interesting story, I, along with 4 of my managers at Merrill, had gone to Paris to attend a very large trade show in our business. And from Paris, we took a side trip to Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
And while on the way to Switzerland, my managers were asking me, so what did we start at? How was the P&L looking? And in the middle of the journey, 2 wines down in the train, they said, boss, so 8 crores to 30 crores, very profitable, same team. Why don't we do it for ourselves? And on a cocktail paper napkin, we made a P&L. And that's how the company was born. Those 4 people who were on the train from Paris to Switzerland are my partners today.
Wonderful.
And that's how Innvolution was born in 2010.
Fantastic. Your company, IITPL, works predominantly in the cath lab space, if I'm correct. And can you explain to our viewers, like, what is cath lab and and its importance?
Yes. So Innvolution, the parent company that I co-founded in 2010, is a company that is in the manufacturing and selling of stents and all related angioplasty products. So just taking a step back for the viewers who are not from the industry, medical industry, angioplasty is a process of opening up clogged blood vessels that supply blood to the heart. So when you have a blockage in one of those arteries, you put in a balloon through a puncture in your groin, and that balloon sort of literally flattens the obstruction out. And then you put a metallic mesh or a metallic spring, like a ballpoint spring called a stent. So stent just holds that blockage from sort of collapsing back and clogging the artery. So that's the whole process of angioplasty. The parent company Innvolution deals with everything related to angioplasty, all the implantable devices. And then in 2016, we signed a joint venture with a company called Alpha X-Ray, which was responsible for launching India's first indigenous cath lab.
Right.
2008, they got acquired by Philips. And then in 2015, they started scouting for opportunities to come back to India. And that's how Innvolution came into picture, I came into picture.
Right.
The third partner is a very large industrial X-ray giant based out of New York called VJ Technologies. They're one of the world's largest X-ray based non-destructive testing companies. And they have clients like Tesla, Boeing, Audi, Heinz,
Right.
in the industry they present.
Right.
So cath lab is that imaging equipment under which you do angioplasty. So you can't do angioplasty without a cath lab. It's a capital equipment which costs typically upwards of 1.8 crores, goes all the way up to 10, 11 crores.
Wow.
And there are only 9 manufacturers globally. We are one of them. So that's about cath labs.
And why would you I've seen, I've followed some of your posts, specifically your contribution into Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Yes.
And what I've heard from some of my people who I know and have gone through using or installing the stent, it is quite an expensive process. So is that something in terms of making it accessible, something that your organization is working towards? Because it's an expensive process. So how do you address that problem of cost optimization for the common people in India?
So Subhadip, that's at the center of everything we do. I mean, in India, our entire endeavor is to make angioplasty more accessible to a large chunk of patients. So I'll just tell you some statistics. Some of them are really startling. COVID killed about 500,000 people. That's government data, 5 lakh people roughly. Heart disease, cardiac disease kills about 30 lakh people every year in the country. It's the number 1 cause of death in India. 6 times the number of COVID every year. And the reason for that is that in a country of about 750 districts, only 240 districts have the availability of a cath lab. 2/3 of the country's districts do not have the availability of a cath lab, and patients typically die before they can get this life-saving treatment of angioplasty. So in both our companies, that is the gap that we are aiming at bridging. And the proudest moment for us is that today we are present in 18 small towns which did not have facility of a cath lab. And because we've made it accessible and affordable to install a cath lab, a great Indian made cath lab, we are able to save lives in those 18 towns and cities.
Phenomenal. And I think that's a wonderful and a very powerful statement you made, and the contribution that you and your organization is doing to make it more affordable, to make it more accessible for the common people. Because today, healthcare is directly proportional to the amount that you can your ability to spend, and I think it is the right for every person, every common person in our country, to at least have that accessibility. And today, most places that what we hear of, it's a story that yes, I mean, your ability to live or overcome some of these complex health conditions is a factor of finance or affordability that you can have. So the fact that you are taking that head on and addressing that very, very important right for any human being, or especially for our fellow Indians, is phenomenal. So more power to you, and congratulations to you and your entire team.
Thank you. So I'll tell you just something more that I just feel like sharing with you, because
Please.
I feel extremely proud as an Indian. we are now called the global pharmacy of the world. It's a known fact. I mean, we have a disproportionately large share of generic medicines globally. Now, the top 5 stent companies globally, there are 2 Indian companies in the top 5 globally. There are companies, including the company that I headed, Merrill, now sells to about 80 countries globally. So feel extremely proud that Indian companies are now being recognized in the global pecking order because of their strong commitment to quality and research, and are still 30 to 40% cheaper or more affordable than their multinational counterparts. So
Sure.
As a fellow Indian, I feel extremely proud of that.
Absolutely, and a very important reason to be proud of that achievement. Gaurav, I just wanted to go back to that train journey that you mentioned of from Paris on your way to Switzerland. 4 of you, maybe 5 of you, you were having these conversations. But were there any moments of self-doubt, after that, from that conversation to that journey of start?
So I'll tell you another incident of serendipity, and there have been just so many in my life, Subhadip, that I feel so blessed, honestly. So we came back to Paris for the trade show, and we had a meeting with a company called Orbis Niche, which was a boutique company manufacturing balloon catheters, which is the second most valuable product in angioplasty after stent. And we were having drinks with this American gentleman who's responsible for Asia, and he said, Gaurav, I mean, if I had somebody like you run a company, I would give distribution for Orbis Niche to you. And just 48 hours ago, we were making business plans on a cocktail napkin. So I said, are you serious? He said, yes. And I said, what's your sale like in India? He said, 3 crores. And I did very quick back of the envelope calculation. I said, that can get us started as a pan-India company. And true to his commitment, we went back. Our company name wasn't finalized, Subhadip, and he signed a distribution agreement in my name.
Wow.
So the company was literally born because of that commitment of distribution that we had. We had 3 crores of sales on day 0.
Right. Phenomenal. And did you guys raise any fund?
No, bootstrapped. Even today, we are about 200 crores in turnover this year, and we're bootstrapped.
Wonderful journey. I mean, and I think the most important part. Today, if you look into this whole entrepreneurship landscape, and you may use whatever coinage, startup or unicorns or whatever cons, or what it soon comes up to. But end of the day, nobody is looking at it as a pure business. When you start something, gone are the if you consider large corporate houses when they were formed 80, 100 years back, potentially as a starter, they didn't think about raising the fund. Today, when I speak with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, I see a propensity that they have in their mind that the success of their organization is the ability or the funding that they have raised. It is not on those basics most often, in terms of how can you plow back your profits, how can you reinvest, retained earnings, and how you can scale through a very organic process. So creating such a large organization, starting bootstrap, I think it's a very, very powerful and a strong message that I want people to take from this, is that don't have that dependency, because most often I've seen people spending so much of time in trying to raise funding in these investor events without even looking into the basics. I mean, what you did, you sold. The best investors are your customers. That's what I always say, and that's what I've always done in my businesses. That however small or big, if you're not selling, the life of a fund is finite. But once your customers once you start getting customers and they start paying you, then it's an infinite story of funding.
I think, Subhadip, you and I come from that era where business ethics, keeping customers and your people happy where growing organically, making profitable growth were some of the things that we've studied in college and in MBA schools. But today that entire conventional wisdom is turned on its head. You have companies that making obnoxious amount of losses and are still unicorns. So personally for me, I'm very old school in that way. I don't understand that business model. पता नहीं आपको समझ आता है कि नहीं?
नहीं, मुझे बिल्कुल समझ में नहीं आता, and I try hard, looking into some of these, reports that you come out, and then of people like, raising huge amounts of money, being a loss-making organization, and not, just a small amount of loss, huge amount of loss, and still they're raising funding, and it's the cap tables are turning, cap tables are growing. And people are getting richer. So, and unfortunately, in some part, I would say unfortunately, because those are what are being highlighted most often, by the media, and people are looking at those stories and those matrices as potentially the success mantras or the success, variants. So, but where would it? When would it stop? At some point,
I'll tell you a very interesting story. 25th year anniversary celebration of Manipal, and I was called upon. They did a entrepreneurship summit. So they called out 20 successful entrepreneurs from the last 25 years. I was fortunate to be invited amongst those, and they organized an interaction, something like a town hall with all the students. And if there was one question which kept coming up with amazing frequency and alacrity, was how to become a unicorn. I said, you guys haven't gotten out of college yet. You don't have a business idea. I said, look, life also teaches you to crawl, walk, and run. But all of them want to start running from day one, want to become a unicorn. I said, I'm the wrong guy. I don't have any magic wand to become a unicorn. I can tell you how to get to 200 odd crores that I have gotten to. And but what is not getting highlighted, Subhadip, is that research has shown that 70% of all startups go bust in the first 3 years.
Right.
They don't talk about those. I think it's extremely important to talk about those.
Yes.
People only see these multi-billion-dollar valuation companies, and you can name them on your fingertips, right?
Right.
It is like Rajnikant came, bus conductor became super success. Doesn't guarantee that all bus conductors will become Bollywood or they'll become Bollywood stars, right? So it's the same analogy.
I mean, see, the bottom of it, there has to be a plan. Okay, and that plan cannot be, you want to raise funds, because why would anyone invest in it? There has to be some value, whether in terms of the prototype of product or in terms of sales and distribution. How are you trying to grow that money? So, people often look into writing the business plan without focusing on, their product or what is the path to monetization. And a lot of these things are, not as complex as people make out of.
Exactly.
End of the day, it's people, buy from people. And, like your journey, I mean, as you were, sharing with me, it's so powerful that you had this conversation. Through the conversation, an opportunity unfolded and you made that huge, but the starting point was that conversation. Yes. And that is what people miss today, most often, especially, young entrepreneurs. I get a chance to speak to many of them, through some part of my work that I do with entrepreneurs and startups. And, the questions are pretty much the same. Like, can you get me funding? And the answer is always, I can't, but that's the most common question that I get most often is about funding. And the question I have for them is, what are you going to do? Do you have a plan that if somebody gives you, let's say, 5 crores or $1 million, how are you going to make it into $5 million, and how long will it take? What are the 5 steps or 6 steps that you already have in mind? What's your plan? And that clarity most often is missing. That I will figure it out is the answer some of them give me.
Exactly. And I think, as rosy and serendipitous as I'm making the journey sound, it has had its huge shares of highs and lows. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, we had a multi-crore salary bill per month and we had zero revenues because hospitals were only doing COVID procedures. And you have to, because you have nearly 200 team members whose families are dependent on you. That gives you sleepless nights, but you need to have the tenacity to make sure that those are the times that your values get tested. When your back is against the wall, that is when your character gets tested.
Absolutely.
And we put every single penny at stake to ensure that our people were paid 100% salaries. There was zero attrition. We didn't sack anybody. And I think we take a lot of pride in that. We have zero pride in saying that we are this revenue size, we have this fancy valuation. I think if you're making a difference to the society in some way through either the product that you are or service that you're selling, or through the ecosystem that you're creating in the business, I think money will automatically follow. Money is just a means to an end. But for a lot of young entrepreneurs, money is the end. I think that's
Right.
where.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, that leads me to the question that I have for you is, what's your meaning of entrepreneurship? I mean, is it something that you discovered yourself better, or is it that you felt that, you became richer? But richer in what sense?
So, brilliant question. I mean, the journey from being an employee to an employer is a huge one. It's a massive journey. It happens in a very short period of time, but then you realize that till yesterday you weren't dependent on somebody for paying your monthly bills, getting your monthly salary, and now you're responsible for lives of people who've chosen you.
Right.
So it's a very competitive world, and people have chosen you because they like what you do, they like how you treat them, they like what they're offered. And we're not the highest paying company in the industry, but our attrition rates are 3%. Our industry average is 18%. We lose less than 3% of our people every year. In IITPL, every single person, right from the guy who serves tea to the leadership team, everybody is a shareholder in the company.
Wonderful.
It's
a powerful thing.
Yeah, so they are all part of the success that we have. All of them have tremendous wealth creation opportunity through being stakeholders in the company. And I think I've absolutely enjoyed every bit of this journey.
Phenomenal. Is there anything that makes you angry, Gaurav?
Lots of things. I think the thing that makes me most angry, Subhadip, is when I see people punching below their weight. I know somebody has potential and I consistently see them performing below par. That makes me very frustrated. Makes me very angry, and it's a shortcoming that I have that I'm working on. But whenever I see somebody who has a lot of potential punching below his weight, I get very flustered.
Right. There's like, often I hear it, from people that the journey of most leaders are lonely. Do you agree to that, or has it been lonely for you?
It's very lonely at the top. That's right. I mean, top is very relative. I'm saying top of my ecosystem. And it's a lot of responsibility. I mean, people draw a lot of energy from the way you conduct yourself. So regardless of whether you had a great day or a bad day, whether you're financially up or down, you've had a bad month or a good month, whether the policies are favorable or not, you need to keep your chin up.
And how do you do that? How do you inspire yourself? I mean, you go out and inspire, like, the 200 employees that you have, and, millions of people who watch you and follow you. But, how does Gaurav Agarwal inspire himself?
So for me, having fun at whatever I do is central to our philosophy. And both the organizations, we have so many celebrations. We have a lot of fun parties. We celebrate birthdays. We basically find an occasion to celebrate. And I think that keeps me going through thick and thin, through tough times and great times. When we're having a bad time, we have smaller scale parties. When we're having a great time, we have grand parties.
Absolutely. It's about connecting with people, as I can understand. Great, fantastic. Gaurav, we are almost towards the end of the show. I have one last question, and that is like any message that you would have for budding entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. I think tenacity is absolutely the key. If you're starting on an entrepreneurial journey, please find a way to make a difference to the society. It could be through having the same product offering but making it more affordable. It could be through a differentiated product or service offering, or it could even be through in a commodity market by completely innovating the way you reach to the market. If you're making a difference or if you're addressing an unaddressed need that the market or a consumer has, nobody can stop you from being successful. And there'll be a lot of challenges along the way, but please remember, it's just a bend and not the end.